Why you feel invisible, even when you're perfect. You tell yourself it's fine. You always do. That being the last to know, the last to be called, the one they forgot to include, doesn't mean anything anymore. But there's this ache. Not loud, just constant. Like your body remembers every time you were invisible, even when your mind tries to forget. And somehow, you still show up early, still over-prepare, still smile like you're not waiting for someone to finally see you. Why do you punish yourself for not being perfect, when all you ever wanted was to be chosen as you were? You keep thinking you've grown out of it. That being passed over doesn't hurt anymore. You're older now, stronger. You've got titles, metrics, accomplishments, proof. But something still glitches. Every time someone chooses someone else, every time you don't get the message back, every time a meeting ends and no one asks what you think, it stings in this weird, microscopic way. Like someone brushed against a bruise you forgot was there. And you don't show it. You never show it. Because you've built this entire identity on being the one who doesn't need anything, the reliable one, the one who doesn't flinch, the one who's fine. But you're not fine, you're just trained. You probably know this feeling, even if you've never said it. That moment when you already know they won't pick you, before they say anything. Before they look around the room, before the sentence even starts. It's not pessimism, it's recognition. You've been here before, too many times. So you start protecting yourself before the rejection even happens. You volunteer extra, you double-check everything. You don't ask for anything unless you've earned it 10 times over. You shrink your needs down to something they can't reject, and call it independence. But here's what no one sees. You've been stuck in the same performance loop for years, and the worst part, you don't even realize you're performing anymore. It's just who you became. You trace it back to these quiet, forgettable moments. Nothing dramatic, just skip turns. Being the one they forgot to call on, the sibling they left out of the joke, the friend who heard about the hangout after it happened, and no one meant to hurt you. That's what makes it worse. It didn't even register to them, but to you. It rewired something you learned early. You don't get picked, not because you're bad, but because you're invisible. So you adapted. You became competent, overcapable, always on. You showed up early, stayed late, fixed things no one noticed were broken. Not to stand out, just to matter. But here's the part that still stings. No matter how hard you try to make yourself impossible to overlook, you still get passed over. Not always, but enough. Enough for your brain to whisper, "See, you were right." So you don't rest. You don't let yourself fall apart, because falling apart means someone might have to pick up the pieces, and you don't trust they will. So you stay together, just barely, tightly wound in this near-perfect silence. You start confusing control for safety, convincing yourself that if you can just get it all right, no one will ever leave again. You call it discipline, work ethic, but underneath it, it's fear. Fear of being the afterthought, the fallback, the unpicked. And when you inevitably fail your own impossible standard, you don't forgive yourself. You punish, with silence, with guilt, with overcorrection. You tighten the loop, because something in you still believes. If you hurt enough, maybe they'll finally notice. You thought perfection was a goal, but it was always a shield. You thought burnout meant you were weak, but it was just your worth collapsing under the weight of your own expectations. You wake up tired. Not from doing too much, but from carrying the fear of being nothing if you don't, and you smile through it, because that's part of the act too. I remember one day, a small thing. We were in a group deciding who would speak. My name didn't come up. Again, and I felt it. Not anger, not even sadness. Just this click. Like a door quietly shutting, like, of course not. And before I could feel anything real, I smiled, nodded, offered to take notes. Because that's what you do when you've learned you don't get chosen. You choose to be useful instead. No one saw it break, because you never made a sound. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how easily you moved on, how automatic it became. You didn't spiral, you didn't collapse, you just kept going. Answered the next email, cleaned up after everyone else, said, "It's okay, I'm just tired." But the tired never went away. Because it wasn't just physical. It was the ache of not knowing whether you mattered, and still pushing forward like you did. You thought strength meant never needing anything back. that if you could become low maintenance enough, you'd never risk being disappointed again. But now you can't even tell the difference between independence and invisibility. When did survival become your only success? Somewhere along the way, you stopped checking in with yourself, stopped asking how you feel, stopped wanting things you couldn't prove. Because wanting, that's dangerous. It opens the door to not getting. And you already know what that feels like. So you aim for perfect. Because at least then, if you're still not chosen, you can say it wasn't them, it was you. Always you. This is when the silence started to scream. Not with noise, with the kind of numbness that makes everything feel far away. You're there, but not really. You answer the question, but forget what you just said. You laugh, but it doesn't reach anywhere. And no one notices, because you're still so good at seeming okay. What if your whole personality was just the version of you they never had to pick? What if your reliability is just grief in disguise? You don't explode. You dim, quietly, until the things you used to care about start feeling like someone else's life. And you tell yourself you're just tired, that you'll bounce back, that this is normal. But somewhere deep down, you already know. You're not bouncing, you're vanishing. Right here is where you got used to disappearing, where being needed became the closest thing you had to being seen, where self-worth became a checklist, and rest turned into a risk. What do you do when your best coping mechanism is also the thing making you disappear? When you're so good at holding it together, you forget what breaking ever felt like. When your idea of okay is just not being a burden, you didn't choose this loop. But you know it like a second skin. You know every step, every rule, every punishment. And the scariest part is, you don't even remember who you were before it began. It didn't fall apart. It faded and no one noticed but you. Maybe it wasn't rejection. Maybe it was the silence that came after, the way no one looked up, the way nothing changed, the way you kept moving like it didn't matter, even though it did. You didn't even flinch. That's how deep it got. It's strange how easy it is to mistake absence for safety, to tell yourself you're better off unchosen, as long as no one sees how much you wanted to be seen. You shrink, you nod, you get good at fading, and no one asks if that was ever your choice. Sometimes the pattern isn't about pain, it's about remembering who you had to be, to survive it. What do you do when perfection was never your dream, just your last defense? And what if all you ever wanted was to be picked, without having to earn it first? Maybe this isn't healing. Maybe it's just hearing your own voice again. You don't have to figure it all out. Just don't disappear mid-thought.